Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here with you here today. Uh, 61 years ago, my father started working as an apprentice in a factory called NEB, not so far from here. It's now called ABB, and it's no longer existing here in Oslo. But he started there making coils to electric transformers when he was 15 years old. This was a period of reconstruction after the war, and NEB delivered transformers to powering up the growing industrial sector in Norway. Myself, I remember growing up in a small village outside Oslo, where the biggest employer was the cement factory. Most of the men worked there. And most of the women didn't. They stayed at home, especially the married woman. My mother, on the other hand, she started working as a teacher a few years later. And she belonged to that generation of women that wanted to do something else than stay at home. A generation that got an education and a job, and who didn't want to quit their jobs when they got married. We can't say that Norway was a poor country, but it was far from the advanced, digitalized, and productive country as we are today. And if we fast forward a couple of years to 1967, the year of flower power, Sergeant Pepper, my birth, but also the year that we made the first oil discovery in Norway, the birth of the national insurance scheme, Folketrygden. One can say that we were lucky to find that the black gold, but by extracting oil from reserves in the North Sea, Norway has grown financially wealthy. However, the whole oil story involves much more than luck. It's also a story of deliberate and clever exploitation of an opportunity. It's also a story of social partners, employers, workers, and authorities working together to build a better society. And this was a process that started many, many years before that. Building a just society based on equal rights and fair distribution is not something that you do with a snap of a finger. There is no quick fix in building a society. It's done brick by brick, and where the rules and the regulations, the institution, is the cement that holding it together. And the Nordic model has been attracted much attention in the recent years, and you have probably heard a lot of stories and explanations about the Nordic models. So, what accounts for the fact that the Nordic countries score better than most other Western countries when it comes to economic development, social relationships, distribution, and employment? And there is no easy and one question to that question. There are many. But the established social dialogue and the tripartism between policymakers, unions, and employers, organizations, I think is a very important factor to our success. For more than 100 years, we have managed to make Norwegian unions and employers to conform to a model of collective industrial relations. Strong institutions have laid the basis for coordination between different policy fields, in which cooperation between the social partners and the political authorities have played a central role. As a result of relatively equal power relations and high trust between the social partners, crises and conflicts in the working life and politics has often been tackled through broad compromises. This conflict partnership between organizations and parties, I believe, is a key to understand the historical evolution of the Nordic model. together, we have created institutions that regulates the labor market. And when my grandfather and my grandmother started working before the war, before my father even was born, there was no such thing as a national insurance scheme. Pensions were meager, and the workers' rights were very limited. Women did not participate in the labor market, a thing we take for granted today. We know that the female participation in the labor market is worth much more than the Norwegian sovereign fund. And in Norway, the appearance of women on job market has greatly increased the nation's capacity. And I think this is a prerequisite for that to happen, was the emerge of an attitude of gender equality. And Norwegian women showed up to work in great numbers and offered their skills. They now outnumber men in higher education. Just imagine the loss to society if that hasn't happened. Now, I've been talking a lot of what we have achieved. But how can poor countries, developing countries, learn from this history? How can Norwegian aid help undeveloped countries achieve the same? Well, again, this brings me back to my father. Everything we achieved started with work. If there's no work, there is no means to build a society. You have to start in that order. And my father, he stayed in the same company for 53 years. 53 years, imagine that. And when he quit in 2010, Norway was a different society than the one we knew when he started working. One of the richest and fairest societies in the world, not only because of luck, but because of coherent policy of labor participation, equality, and fair distribution. This is not something that happens in just one day, or a year, or even 10. It takes time, but it also takes politicians who make the right choices, who demands that our oil revenue goes to everyone, not only to the oil companies. And it takes employers and unions that works together. And it takes trust. Trust in each other, trust in institutions, but it all starts with the fact that we have to create jobs. Thank you very much.